Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast, recording from the WELT studios. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you. And this feels like peak off season, and we're in late October.
Not a lot of news over the last week, so we'll just make up news here.
We will have some fun.
Yes.
We're going to do 5 bold predictions for IndyCar in 2025 That is
that's our main thing,
main focus for today.
But working on some guests for later in the off season. You reached out to Rob Howden and doesn't follow lights anymore. He said, because he's involved so much in karting and the road to Indy minus Indy lights. So we'll have Rob Howden on at some point. Nathan Brown we hope to have on from the Indianapolis Star at some point. He's on paternity leave. So we'll have some guests throughout the offseason, maybe track down some random split era drivers of the week as well. So we'll keep it entertaining here over the lengthy off-season, but we'll have some fun today with some of our predictions for next year.
Yes, now these are 5 bold predictions for IndyCar in 2025.
Bold predictions.
Yes, bold.
In bold.
Yes.
Bold predictions in bold.
All caps?
All caps. I don't know. We'll see how bold they are.
Yeah, we shall see.
Yes.
First, though, hi, Justin. How
Hello,
are you?
Caleb. Are you getting any more sleep? Leave us a sleep update.
It hit or miss. I don't feel like it's really been that bad until this week, because he's just like we went out like for our anniversary a couple days ago, and then he was kind of awake for a while, and then he was asleep when we were at dinner, but then he wouldn't take a bottle before I went to bed. So I do like the late night feed and then one of the overnights, and so that was really concerning. He hardly ate, but then he's kind of getting back on track. But last night I was up till 1:30,
nice.
Which normally I'm in bed between 12:30 and 1.
Yeah.
So just like slightly off. But
it's that if you get them anywhere out of their routine, it just throws everything off.
Well, and we're going up to Michigan this weekend, staying in a hotel, visiting some of my wife's family. So we'll see how that works.
The joys of parenthood, particularly the first one, and definitely when they're just a couple months old. It's a lot of fun, I guess.
Yeah, so we're getting through it.
Good to hear.
I can't say. Here's the thing, like I'm tired, but like we take naps sometimes, and it's still for some reason I just thought it would just be like so hard where you're just so tired. I don't feel like I've been that way most of the time.
Good.
There have been days, but not.
The older you get, and especially when you start having kids, like naps are everything.
Yes, we both fell asleep last night watching TV.
Nice.
And then it was kind of like, oh, great. Now I don't know if I can go to sleep at night. That was not a problem because he was up late.
Yeah, not a problem at all. But yes, we'll keep update on sleep schedules and all that as we go through the off season as well. But did you watch? Well, I know you watched some of the U.S. Grand Prix.
I caught the start and had it on, and then it was boring, I'm not going to revisit it. I had it DVR. I wasn't watching live.
I watched the first 2 laps on Sunday, and then I was like, I'll watch the rest at work on Monday. I didn't really need to. I just had it on in the background as I was working. I didn't really pay attention. I just kind of looked up and like, oh, yeah, it's the same thing.
I saw who won and saw it was a Ferrari 1-2, so I watched the start. And then realized quickly, okay, nothing really interesting is going to happen the rest of the race.
Yeah, other than Lewis going out, I guess.
Which was also early.
Which was very early, yeah. So now they go to Mexico. Now, as Pato said, he's going to be there because he's doing FP1, right, this weekend.
Pato O'Ward doing FP1 in Mexico for McLaren. He had an event at the mall, drew an unbelievable crowd if you haven't seen the video on social media.
You said for Kit Kat?
Yeah.
Like the candy bar?
Yes, for Kit Kat. Huh. So it was at a mall in Mexico City. Crazy crowd, people chanting his name. It was packed to the gills.
Like somebody put a video up of like the line outside was just nuts. I mean, anybody who thinks that anyone else is the most popular driver in IndyCar, if you need it reaffirmed that's Pato O'Ward, check out those videos.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll see how he performs in FP1 coming up this weekend as we record Thursday, October 24th here Thursday morning in the U.S. All right, time for our 5 bold predictions.
So you want to go back and forth? Like you do your, because you have 3, I have 2.
Yeah.
So you give your first one.
My first one. A team other than Penske and Ganassi will finally win the IndyCar championship in 2025.
That's one of mine.
Okay, so there's our shared one.
There's our shared one. Now, do you have a pick? Because I have a pick. I mean, it's okay if you don't have a pick.
Yeah, I mean, I could go with several drivers. I feel like Pato O'Ward could do it. I feel like Colton Herta could do it. I even feel like Kyle Kirkwood could take a jump in year 3.
I think some of this for both of us is wishful thinking, hopefully. I have it typed out on my phone here.
Okay.
Pato wins title for McLaren.
Okay. It's funny because we predicted him to win the title,
2 years ago?
2 years ago, and then we backed off. And then, of course, he goes out and rips off 3 wins after he had a winless season the year before.
Correct.
I just think it's time. Like, I don't think there's really any reason. Like, I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that, eventually these things change, right? And I just think that's where we're at. I think this will be a year of change in the title fight. I think we already saw that with how Colton Herta performed this past season, how strong he was.
Yep.
And that was with leaving a few things on the table.
Right.
These 2 young drivers in particular are going to win IndyCar championships. I'm willing to go out and say that.
Yeah.
And I guess I have the expectation they win multiple championships apiece as opposed to just one. And I think the time has come for that shift to happen. Yes, Alex Blow is still really good. Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, they're all still really good. Don't get me wrong. But I think we're due for a change.
12 years is enough, right? 12
Yes.
years is long enough without
Yes.
somebody winning the championship outside of Penske and Ganassi.
And I think McLaren made some gains. I think going with a younger driver lineup and having all of that solidified going into the season is going to be helpful.
Right.
Hopefully a lot less off-track drama with the team, more
Right.
stability. You know what they have. You have a young talent that's unproven in Nolan Siegel. You have a young driver who's really great on road and street courses in Christian Lundgaard who's got to develop more on ovals. But to be fair, how much was that him?
Right.
How much was that the Ray Hall team struggling on ovals?
Very true.
And then obviously Pato O'Ward is one of the 5-6 best drivers in the series.
Yeah, so we found common ground there. I think you make a good point about Andretti, too. I mean, so many people are focusing on the negative of Michael Andretti basically extricating or being extricated from the team. But as we'll get to in a little bit with discussions with Rob Edwards that Marshall Pruitt had, talking about adding engineering and crews and spreading out, having people work ahead at Andretti on other races, adding personnel. And those are some of the things that Penske and Ganassi are able to do as opposed to just taking one weekend at a time. So could the changes at Andretti lead to more resources and thus better performance? And I think that could vault that team, particularly with Colton Herta, into the championship conversation. So it's always, positivity around the offseason. Everybody's, of course, we'll get into over the course of the next several months, everybody making engineering upgrades. Everybody's in a better spot than they were last year. But I do feel like there's a chance for Andretti because we have seen the limitations of that team over the last several years. And that's not directly blaming Michael Andretti, but we're also looking at it and saying this team isn't doing enough to be a consistent championship contender. It shoots itself in the foot way too much, whether it's strategy, whether it's personnel, whether it's mechanicals, too many errors. Does new leadership lead to more investment, which leads into less errors?
I also think just the processes of how things are going to be done will change. Just with a change in leadership,
for better or for worse. I think it's up to remain to be seen. But the fact of the matter is, I think Andretti is going to make some changes. Andretti Global, I can't really say Andretti anymore. Andretti Global will make changes that they feel will position them better going forward.
And also having a driver lineup where all the drivers have had at least a year of experience with the team, I think will help. Ericsson had a tough year. He had really high highs and really low lows last season. Obviously, I think we both agree he has a bounce back season next year and is back to being a top 10 driver in the series. I think that will change, and that will be a positive. Kirkwood didn't win any races, but he was really consistent in getting top fives and top tens. So
you feel he'll bounce back next year.
Yes.
With the season he had in 2023.
Yes.
After not winning in 24.
Yeah, I think he had a better overall season last season. Obviously didn't win 2 races like he did the year before in his first with Andretti. Okay, so we both agree on point number 1. Let's go to you.
Point
next.
number 2, I don't know how bold a prediction this is, but I predict 36 cars trying to qualify for the Indianapolis 500.
Okay.
With the amount of full-time entries, 27, correct, for next year, confirmed?
Yes, 27.
All we need is 9 extra cars. You throw Dreyer and Reinbold in there. You have
That's
Abel's,
29.
Right? You have Abel that will probably be there in some capacity. You get to 30, and then you start throwing in extra cars, Ray Hall, Foyt, all those. I think it's easy.
Larson.
You're right, exactly. So I think it's
4th at Andretti.
It's easy to get to 36 in my opinion.
Ed Carpenter. I mean,
right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I'll believe it when I see it, but I like that you went out on a limb.
Yeah, it's it's bold.
Here's where we're at. So we have 27 full-time, as you mentioned. Okay, then you look at Elio at Meyer-Shank. That's 28. Ed Carpenter Racing, that's 29. You have
2 Dreyer.
Kyle Larson.
That's 30.
That's 30. And these are all confirmed. So we're at 30
correct.
At the moment in terms of we expect, 2 drivers at Coyne full-time, 2 drivers at Juncos full-time, the second Prima driver to be announced. That's throwing that in, and obviously the third Ray Hall.
Yep.
So there's 30. Then you get to a 4th at Ray Hall. There's 31. A 4th at Andretti, which is expected, at least we think. More on that later.
Yes.
That's 32.
DRR with 2.
That's 34. Marshall Pruitt has alluded to Ganassi running a 4, so that's 35.
Abel's effort.
Do they partner with a Juncos? Do they partner with Dreyer Reinbold?
I mean, maybe, but that's your 36.
Foyt run a 3rd. That's 36.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some wiggle room on this may not happen, but this happens to still get to 36. You don't need every scenario to get to 36. So I feel like we're in a good spot with so many options and already confirmed 30. And I really feel already confirmed 32 because DRR is bringing 2.
Yes. Now the issue,
4 extra cars.
The issue with that is Chevy, the way I counted it, currently has 16 engine leases for full-time and part-time entries if you include, I think, 2 at DRR. So then that would leave 2 spots.
Correct. So,
and I think, no, that does not include DRR, so that would be the 2 extra spots. So it would probably be more likely a Honda team, Ganassi running a 4th. Who else? Ray Hall running a 4th that would get us there to that number.
I just feel like it's highly probable right now, maybe it's highly possible that we get to 36 for the first time since when? 2020? No, not 2020.
No, 2019.
Okay, yeah.
That was the year of Pato Ward, who was with Carlin, and Max Chilton with Carlin, getting bumped along with Alonso, who was partnered with Carlin, getting bumped.
Yes. So, yeah, I think that's a definite possibility. That's one of my bold predictions for 2025. What is your second? You can't pick another one of mine, so my 2 are already gone.
I don't think I will here.
What do you got?
So this is really bold because it's never happened in the Indianapolis 500. Speaking of the Indianapolis 500, Joseph Newgarden will win a 3rd straight Indianapolis 500 in 2025. Now, we've seen drivers get close. Most recently, Elio won in 2001, won 2002, 2nd in 2003, trying to chase down Gilles de Ferran, could not do so late in that race. And then obviously Bill Vukovich, he won back-to-back, was leading, and then he crashed and unfortunately passed away due to that crash in 1955 after winning in 53 and 54. Those are really the 2 most notable instances. I can't really think of... I'm sure there's another one out there, but those are the 2 I think of off the top of my head. I just think he's figured out the speedway. It took him a long time to get that first win. He just got number 2 last year. He doesn't need to dominate the race. He's patient. He picks his spots really well. And with this car combination, with where the car's at, it's still the same. Yes, you added the hybrid, but I don't think that's a drastic enough of a change. I think we see history made next year at Indy.
And Penske has figured it out the last couple years at Indy, right? I mean, before that, for a couple years, they were non-factors. But since Joseph Newgarden has been able to win back-to-back, that's shown Penske has figured it out, whether on their own, combined with their efforts with Foyt, whatever. The fact of the matter is Penske is fast. I also think that change, while good, does in the short term, but also helps Penske, I think, because they have the most resources to figure out aero in terms of the added weight.
And throw in what they've been able to accomplish in just 1 year in the partnership with Foyt. That right? Took them to a next level in terms of qualifying, where that was the weakness before and kind of why we wrote off Penske at the 500 for a few years, because they weren't qualifying well.
And so, yeah, I think if anybody has a chance to do it, I mean, you put Joseph Newgarden right now among the favorites anyway to win the Indianapolis 500. And so why not 3 straight? If everything goes the way it according to plan for Penske, they could pull it off.
All right, what's your number 2 here?
Well, that was my number 2 was the Pato. So what's your third?
My third. Wow, we've gone through this list this fast.
It was supposed to take up the majority of the show.
I thought you'd have more debate with me on some of my choices.
Well, let's see about this one.
Okay, I think a major longtime star in IndyCar will retire, at least from full-time competition, after the 2025 season.
Scott Dixon?
Whether that's Dixon, whether that's Power, I'm not making a specific,
right?
But I think we will see that happen.
I think so. We keep talking about the next generation, right? But we still have some of the generational guys still around. Talking about Will Power, talking about Scott Dixon in particular, those two. I agree. I think, and I know Lynn's going to love this, Scott Dixon is not winning another IndyCar championship. Whether he races 1 more year, 3 more years. I mean, the max you're looking at, how old is he right now? 42?
Scott Dixon is 44. He just turned 44 in July. He's
not racing past 45 or 46, in my opinion. This is not a guy that's just going to hold on. I don't want to
And Will Power will be 44 by the time we get to St. Pete next year.
And I know he's been kind of reinvigorated, Power, because of the health issues with his wife and winning races and coming back after 2022 or 2023. But I just feel like these guys don't need to prove anything anymore. They've won championships. They've won Indianapolis 500s. Do you feel like any part of Alex Palou's dominance, I don't want to say forces, but makes Scott Dixon feel more comfortable with moving on? Because for so long, he was the guy at Chip Ganassi Racing. You felt almost like he couldn't move on until Ganassi had another Scott Dixon. And they do. So now, does that make Scott Dixon sit back? Okay, it's like, okay, I can pass the torch to a new generational driver, and Alex Palou, after what I've done over the past 15 or so years.
I mean, he's still won 2 races last year, 3 the year before, 2 the year before that. Now, he did only win 1 race in 2021. That's kind of the low point after coming off, a dominant championship season in 2020.
And what have his points finishes been in the last 4 years?
So after winning in 2020, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 6th. 6th is his worst going back to 2016, where he also finished 6th.
Is it an anomaly, or in my opinion, the decline of Scott Dixon?
I mean, he went 3rd, 2nd, 6th, so I don't know.
Well, no, I'm saying this past year, 6th. Is it the start of the real decline because he's getting older, because that's inevitable for everybody? You decline in your skills the older you get? Or is it just a blip on the radar? And maybe that's what makes 2025 the catalyst for Scott Dixon. If he finishes outside the top 5 in points again, is that really the tipping point to say, all right, that's it, I'm done? If he finishes 2nd and 3rd, does that reinvigorate him and say, yeah, I still got it to come back in 2026? Because I do think, I continue to stick to it, and as much as Lynn is going to hate me, Scott Dixon is on the decline. Because anybody in their mid-40s when they're an athlete are going to be declining. Unless your name is Tom Brady, you are on the decline. Your best years are behind you.
And even he had a year of decline and then goes to Tampa Bay and wins the Super Bowl and had 2 good years to close out his career.
Scott Dixon is not going to be a 48-year-old guy racing an IndyCar. He's just not.
Full time, right?
Full-time.
I mean, I could see him running at Indy, or do you think?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Do you think when both those guys are done, like they're done, or do you think they come back? I mean, we've seen Ryan Hunter-Reay come back and run Indy as a one-off a couple times.
Scott Dixon feels like a guy that would just walk away and be done and be content. I kind of compare him,
and I don't think he's a guy that, he may help out with Ganassi, but I don't think he hangs around the sport a lot.
I don't even think, maybe a driver coach behind the scenes. He's not, he doesn't get as involved as Dario. But I look at Scott Dixon kind of like a guy that I know in the journalism world. Reggie Hayes.
Yes.
A Hall of Fame writer. He's inducted into the Indiana Sports Writer Hall of Fame. Just great at his craft. And when the News Sentinel in Fort Wayne here in Indiana went belly up and he lost his job, he was just done. He went cold turkey. He did not write any, he does some stuff for St. Francis, where he works now, the University of St. Francis. But in terms of sports writing, he was just done. I mean, one of the best at his craft, and was perfectly content just walking away from it and never doing it again. And I just get that vibe from Scott Dixon, one of the best in the business. When he's done, he's done. He's not, in my opinion, going to be an Indy one-off or do some sports car racing. And maybe a year of sports car racing here and there, but I just don't see him as a hanger-on late into his 40s. I think when he's done, he's done.
As a bonus, how many more years do you think Elio's going to do the one-off? You think next year's it? Or...
Elio...
he can go as long as there's an open invite, and I think sponsors will be willing to fund him. Now, the quality of ride, what's that going to look like if he leaves Meyer-Shank?
I think if we see a noticeable decline in his abilities over consecutive years, then maybe. But I don't think you're going to have a shortage of teams and sponsors that are going to want to be a part of the potential to have that 5th Indianapolis 500 win. But if you start seeing Elio really decline in effectiveness at the 500, of which we haven't seen that yet consistently, then as long as he has it, I think he can continue to come back because if he's on the cusp of history, right?
Yeah, I think he'll have an open invite for a while. And I don't think he's going anywhere.
Right, but I also think Elio's not going to keep doing it if he doesn't feel like he has a ride that can compete for a win.
Correct.
All due respect, he's not. If Juncos is his only option for the 2026 500, he's not doing it.
That's a little bonus, I guess, prediction, but that's for 26. We're obviously talking 25.
Go.
So those are our 5 bold predictions. I'll be curious to see how wrong we are on all of these.
Yes.
If we get any of them right. That's really what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to keep this written down somewhere and revisit it and see if any of these are right. Or maybe all 5. Probably not.
Probably not. All right, so if you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. Now, normally I'd say you can find us at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. Check out the store. We have T-shirts and stickers there. We have the email list to subscribe to. Well, we're doing some maintenance on the website, revamping it, so that is down at the moment. Hopefully it's back up next week. But as always, you can find us on social media, IndyCar Podcast on Twitter /X, on Instagram as well, on Facebook. Just search for New Track Record. You can also always email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions, comments, rants on there. And if you sign up for the weekly email, you know that we send out our episodes. So be sure to sign up for that once we get everything back up and running on the site. And as always, you can support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier and others for their support. And download and listen for free on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, CastBox, Player FM, YouTube Music, wherever you find and listen to your podcasts. Okay, mailbag time, and it's pretty short this week, which is not a surprise. It was a pretty quiet week in the last week or so, and we start, and this is someone replying to last week's episode. Tom Taylor, MLIS, said, totally agree with new track record guys on IMSA. Can't tell what's going on and not worth it to me to figure it out. I want to get into it. I think the cars, especially the hypercar at Le Mans, and
right.
Is that what they're also calling the top class in the U.S.? I don't remember. They look cool. I just have not been able to get into it.
Yeah, and
I got to go to an event, I think, to get into it.
Exactly. That's kind of where I'm at as well. And even then, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. So, look, for people that like it, watch it, great. We're just two people that, just a couple of guys with not enough time to watch. And when we do, I don't understand it.
Yeah. Elsewhere on the mailbag, this from Jeremy from HBG, and this is, you posted this saying, mistaken our opinion, she isn't ready for IndyCar, go back for one more year of lights, because Jamie Chadwick is not planning to go back to that series. A few replies on this. He said, where is there a good ride open in IndyCar? Well, for starters, I guess I would say for a rookie, the Rahal ride is actually a good ride. It's an established team. You'll get support. Now, do they figure out oval racing? That's an engineering question.
Yeah.
But I would say that's a decent ride that's left. Elsewhere, a lot of people had replies on this. Vin Designs 2013 said, no sense in doing another year in lights. If it hasn't happened to this point, it's not gonna. She improved a lot. I feel like year 3, just like we kind of see with Miles Rowe, coming back for another year feels like that breakout year to me.
And I know that Jamie Chadwick has said that the majority of her funding comes from England, and they're not too keen on funding a third season of lights.
Understandable.
But that's the best avenue for her. The jump from year 1 to year 2 was tremendous for her. Winning a race, right? Sitting on pole. Now, if you go from year 2 to year 3, that natural progression, and what we've said repeatedly, she could be a championship contender. She would be much more alluring to an IndyCar team with a top 3 finish in the lights standings in 2025, as opposed to where she's at right now.
The downside is, if you spend 3 years in lights and don't show enough growth, it's never going to happen unless you bring a big budget.
Agreed, but that's still her best opportunity, I guess, unless she thinks she's going to go to sports cars, maybe. And
I think a partial IndyCar season, say we're looking at half a schedule, including the Indy 500. I think that's a decent option if that's what she could put together.
But what's better for her long term in IndyCar? A third season of lights and showing what she can do with another year, or getting a couple rides and being a couple drives in IndyCar and being a non-factor in 2025? I mean, that's the thing. Is like you
from a visibility standpoint, it's IndyCar, and lights. You got to finish top 3 to really be on the radar of teams or have a massive budget. And it doesn't sound like she has a massive budget. I mean, would she have the budget to come back full time in lights? It sounds like it,
right?
But I mean, on one hand, I like this move because she's betting on herself.
I get it.
Do I think she would be better served by going back to lights for another year and finishing top 3 or maybe even winning the championship and getting the scholarship money? Yes, that's a best case scenario, but the worst case is you stay the same or regress, and then you're never getting to IndyCar.
Right. And like you said, good on her to have confidence in herself. I get it. I just don't think there's enough confidence with teams in the paddock, the IndyCar paddock, to say, yeah, come race for us, unless you're bringing a considerable amount of money. She may have that. The options right now are very, very slim. She's not going to Rahal. So I don't know. I hope it works out.
If she goes to IndyCar and all she gets is the Indy 500, it's not worth it to me.
Agreed. But this is the thing is, this is the closest that IndyCar has gotten since Danica, I feel, to have a legitimate potential female star at the IndyCar level at some point. I don't think she's there yet, but she could be.
You don't think Simona Di Silvestro? I mean, she had a podium, right? And
yeah, I mean, but she wasn't a star. I mean, she just, it was nice. She deserved more.
Good driver.
Yeah, she deserved more credit. She deserved more hype, but she wasn't wasn't it.
She didn't have the name recognition. Like Jamie
Correct.
Chadwick came in with name recognition.
Very much so. I just feel like you only have one chance as a young driver, especially if you don't have much money behind you, to really make an impact in IndyCar. And I just worry that she's just not quite ready. So if she got like a 3-race, quote unquote, tryout with a team, I think that's going to be 3 races of adjusting to the car and the racing and all that, as opposed to, I'm going to show what I can do. And you may only get 3 races.
And a good theory here from Lynn_IndyCar. Jamie needs another year in lights. I say she goes to the new Chip Ganassi racing team with DHL sponsorship, since she has a personal relationship with them. And, of course, CGR has one as well. That's an interesting theory. I do like that. But, again, she's not coming back to lights. Could she come to Ganassi in a part-time entry? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if she if Chip Ganassi sat her down, and Mike Hall sat her down and said, hey, look, I know you don't want to go back to lights, but here's what we're thinking. And you say you race lights with Ganassi, their first year back, and then you have an opportunity, if you impress, to maybe vault into a full-time spot in 2026 with one of the top 2 teams in the entire series. I mean, she would be silly to turn that down, wouldn't she?
Yeah, no, I agree.
If we anticipate maybe Scott Dixon calling it quits after 2025, that opens a seat up, right? Or if at the very least, hey, do full-time lights in 2025 and we guarantee you a 500 ride in 2026 along with a couple other races. It's tough to turn that down, again, with one of the top teams in this series. So I know she has sights on IndyCar for 2025, but would it be the right situation? And I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see the opportunities for her as being a can't miss opportunity to prove what she can do.
And then finally, this from Sam. Definitely shown improvement year 1 to 2, and her results on paper don't tell the whole story, which that is true. I mean, in year 1, she seemingly got taken out so many times.
Right.
And then had bad luck early in the season, hit her stride, got the win at Road America, and then it was back to bad luck again, seemingly. But he says, I think another year would have helped. I think the charter system killed her chance at a partial season or made that deal harder. Was hoping for her and Kat to share the ELF car. That is an interesting scenario as well.
And it's a good point about the charters for sure, and everybody going down to 3 cars.
If Catherine Legg did the ovals, and then she did road and street courses, and then also got an Indy 500 entry out of it, to me, that's a win.
That is a definite, because ELF is all in on Catherine Legg. They become a bigger and bigger sponsor over the course of the year. You could sell them on Chadwick, I would think.
I would think so as well. I mean, if they're fine with, sharing the drivers, getting the sponsor, right. To me, I actually like that theory quite a bit.
That would be, in my opinion, a perfect scenario for Chadwick to get into IndyCar and, with partner with Catherine Legg and partner with that team and have ELF as a sponsor.
This from Lynn_IndyCar as well. Is this a new trend with F2 drivers coming to the USA to drive lights? I think F1 has a problem with drivers being promoted in their system. Well,
we've known that for a while.
We've known that part. As far as coming to lights, yes, that's new, and he's referring to a change, and this is pretty big. Dennis Hogger, I believe that's how you pronounce it, signed with Andretti Global for 2025 in lights. 3 seasons in F2, won 5 races in total, and I believe he was the 2021 F3 champion. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So, I mean, to me, this is a huge get for that series. And as more and more drivers across the pond find value in what lights is becoming, I mean, I was doing some counting. You look at lights right now, so I believe he is the 13th or 14th confirmed entry already. And you look at the series and how the teams are going to have their entries. Now, who knows how many HMD is going to have. So I'm going to leave them with where they're at on their entries. They could certainly add more. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 full-time. Last year they ran, 10? So they're at 6. Right. Chip Ganassi Racing is going to do 2. Andretti Cape, which is a partner team, they just announced as well Ricardo Escado, the Mexican driver. That team in partnership with Andretti Global, will have another entry as well. So let's see, 6, 8, that'll make 10. Andretti Global has 4, that's 14. Able Motorsports is going to run 4 cars. They have 2 confirmed. That's 18. Miller Vinatieri Motorsports will probably run Jack Miller. That's 19. Juncos, if they run 2, that's 21.
Right.
And again, that's not including HMD even expanding at all either.
Right. Which they will. I mean, they're not going to only run 6. So, yeah, it's going to be a healthy
20
field.
plus entries seems very realistic.
20 plus. And yes, absolutely. So it's huge. And you don't know still after every season who's going to be spit out of the F1 ladder over in Europe. I mean, Gabriel Bortoleto is leading right now F2. They think he could be headed to Sauber, but you don't know. And that's not to say anything about the runner-up and third place guy that finishes in F2 and feels like he's done all he can. That's the problem, is every year you have more talent looking for seats, not just in the United States, but then you have it in Europe as well. So and that's the thing, is do you have a better chance if you're an F2 driver of, if your road to F1 is blocked and you can't get an IndyCar, but you see the evidence that Indy Lights goes right into IndyCar and the success stories you have time and again, that's your best bet, right? Even if you just do it for a season. And
you're not streaming only on Peacock.
All of a sudden, you're having, on FS1 all the time.
One race that's actually viewed, and well, I guess that's changed. What race was actually, viewed by a lot of people? I guess
none,
because you don't have the Freedom 100 anymore.
Right.
So you're getting all your races on FS1, maybe a couple on FS2 due to scheduling conflicts. I mean, you have a legitimate cable channel that covers sports that's going to have all the practice and qualifying for IndyCar as well.
I mean, you have to think, if you get 50,000 people on average to watch those races, how many people do you think were watching them on Peacock? 5,000?
Yeah, I was going to say a tenth.
I mean, that'd be tenfold.
Yes.
A tenfold. I mean, that's just 50,000 people.
Like if we're looking at how many people viewed it, within 24 hours.
Right.
On Peacock.
A couple thousand maybe?
Yeah. 10,000 probably.
I mean, as compared to a minuscule number like 50,000 people watching on a sports day. I mean, it's incomprehensible what this jump could do for
And
Lights.
Also think of it like this. You're going to have Lights on FS1 or FS2, and in some instances, you'll have that race on the TV package. They'll be teasing the IndyCar race on Fox constantly. Hey, coming up tomorrow or coming up later this afternoon. So you'll have built-in, way to drive viewership over to IndyCar as well. It's such a win. I don't think people understand, and we talk about this so much, but how big of a deal it is for Lights to have this new TV package.
It's going to be massive. And that's a question, too, on who. I know we don't have who's going to be in the IndyCar booth, who's going to be in that Indy Lights booth, potentially.
Another good question. One final thing for the mailbag, Poet Shevchenko saying, the smartest thing IndyCar management can do now is throw their weight behind the people related to the sport who are organically growing support by themselves, no strings attached. This obviously in reference to Pato Award's Kit Kat appearance at a Mexico City mall. Just unbelievable. The scene, the line to get in, the crowd inside. It was a mob of people, and it'll be fascinating to see what that mob of people looks like at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez this weekend for the F1 race in Mexico City. As we mentioned, Pato doing FP1 on Friday as well. Okay.
Yeah, just a huge just following. It just continues to just boggle my mind of how crazy his support is. And how IndyCar hasn't maximized.
Yeah, how they've dropped the ball. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. All right, that does it for the mailbag. As we said, that would be quick. Time for news and notes. We start with some silly season stuff. And in the Racer mailbag, Marshall Pruitt. So we talked a little bit about Jamie Chadwick, a little bit more on her, plus more on another driver. Jamie basically said nothing related to her leaving Andretti, related to Michael's leaving or ouster. He said ouster. I'm not going to, put words.
Right. That's his words, not ours.
That's his words, not ours. But look, I think this part's interesting. He said placing 7th in the light standings with 1 win and 1 pole wasn't enough to get a Dale Coyne Racing, Juncos Hollinger Racing, or Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing to offer a bargain rate to drive for them. So it's a need to put together a strong budget and fast, since there are lots of interested buyers for the best drivers. That's what she's battling against.
Yeah, she's just in a bit of a pickle because she doesn't want to do year 3, but she hasn't done enough to garner enough interest from IndyCar teams. Just kind of in that no man's land.
Meanwhile, Linus Lundqvist, this is an interesting note by Pruitt. Linus is among the top contenders for the 1 or 2 paying seats left in the series, but isn't racing for Ganassi and IndyCar. Now, we know Kiffin Simpson's going to be back with the team with Ganassi next year. It's not been confirmed, but we all expect that to be the move.
As long as the check clears.
What are the 1 or 2 paying seats left in the series? I would guess one is Coyne and the other Ray Hall.
Probably.
Because I would assume Coyne does 1 paying seat and 1 seat where they have to pay.
I mean, you feel Juncos are both paying seats? I mean, Romain Grosjean didn't bring a lot. He was a paid driver last year.
He had his personal sponsors, and that's
not enough for an entire season.
No.
So maybe Juncos?
Do you expect... I don't know. I would go with one of the Coyne seats.
I mean, are we still saying it's Robert Schwartzman in the second Prima spot, or is that another...
That's an interesting thing. It's weird that hasn't been announced. Now, are they waiting because he's still in the midst of his season? Like,
where's he racing now? I don't even know.
That is a good question. Because he was in F2, but I don't know if he's actually there anymore.
I don't think he's in F2.
No, he's not. So he is in WEC.
Okay. I don't think they would wait until the end of the WEC season.
I don't think so either. I think it's quite odd to me that they have not announced him.
I agree, which makes me think that could still be up for grabs as a paying seat.
He is a reserve driver for Ferrari in F1. But yes, he's with AF Course in WEC, which is a Ferrari team as well. I find that odd. I find it very odd that seat hasn't been announced.
Right. Unless Prima's like, hey, this is our game plan, and we're going to spread out announcements over the course of the offseason to continue.
I mean, it's been a month since their other announcement.
Yeah, that's kind of one that I look at that we assume is full, but the longer we go without the announcement, we kind of question, is it really full? So could that be a Linus Lundqvist potential option?
Could be, but that's something to keep in mind for silly season. Now, elsewhere, Andretti Autosport, or excuse me, wow, that's a fine.
Wow,
that's a fine. Andretti Global, Andretti Global. Marshall Pruitt had
say Team Green, Andretti Team Green.
Yeah, at least I did not. But Marshall Pruitt posted an article, and what does Michael Andretti leaving the team mean for Marco Andretti and running the Indy 500 with the team in 2025? Rob Edwards
it's really side-skirted that question.
He said, "We will run an extra entry at Indy. That's in the plan. I'll probably not say anything else beyond that." Now, it's assumed they run Marco Andretti. In fact, Marshall Pruitt in the mailbag itself basically said expected entry from Marco Andretti last week, talking about extra entries for Indy.
I guess maybe...
And I had read elsewhere, it's expected Marco's back, and maybe that was where I read it, but this kind of throws cold water on it.
And maybe as more and more information comes out, maybe not publicly, but behind the scenes that insiders know, but the breakup between Andretti Global and Michael Andretti, like maybe there's more of a fracture there than originally thought. And could that lead to Marco maybe simply not wanting to drive for that team with potentially how his father was or wasn't treated? I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing that I look at is, does Marco want to race for a team that, what it sounds like, effectively booted his dad?
That will be another thing to watch, because we just assumed Marco would be back. The open invite was there as long as he wanted to do it.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't. And I kind of look at Marco, too, as a guy that wouldn't have a problem not racing. He's not a guy that, to me, would race at Indy at all costs.
No.
I think he's content with what he's done and hasn't done at the Speedway, and I don't think he would really be a guy that would take an inferior ride or maybe take a ride with a team that did his dad wrong just to race the 500.
And then one other interesting tidbit from that article on Racer.com, unconfirmed, but Marshall Pruitt says, Racer understands AutoNation is ending its motor racing sponsorships. Now, this isn't a massive surprise. There have been rumors of that, kind of impacting the Meyer-Shank lineup for 2025. Right. That's been kind of an open secret, if you will, for a while. So that's not a surprise. I guess the question is, what's the sponsor for Kyle Kirkwood, which when you look at the alignment of Kirkwood and AutoNation, it actually made so much sense because AutoNation is a Florida company. Kyle Kirkwood's a Florida guy. There was a lot of alignment there that I think people took for granted.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, too, with AutoNation. I mean, this. It feels like this isn't not an abrupt announcement. I have to feel that both teams knew this was coming, and it's not just an IndyCar thing. It's getting completely out of
they were in F1, NASCAR, IMSA, IndyCar.
So, I mean, it hurts obviously, but I don't think this is out of left field. I think teams were aware that this was going to happen.
I think so as well. I think it's a bummer because I think AutoNation did a lot. I mean, they sponsored several IndyCar teams,
but it was a different thing. Like, Kirkwood was sponsored by AutoNation National, but wasn't the relationship with Meyer-Shank? Like, it was Meyer's relationship with...
No, he's Sirius XM. That's what you're thinking.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, my fault. So, but it's a... Anytime you have a sponsor leave the series, it's not good, but this is just an IndyCar exclusive thing. So we don't need to panic. Oh my gosh, this sponsor's leaving IndyCar, but they're still sponsoring in Cup or F1 or whatever. They're just done across the board.
Okay. Let's see. Elsewhere on the news and notes portion, Indy 500 tickets are now on sale, along with all the other events at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 2025. And per-ticket fees are waived until January 6, 2025. It's a $4 per-ticket fee that is waived through that period.
Get your tickets early, folks.
So keep that in mind. Do
we have a forecast yet for Memorial Day weekend?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I don't think so. There's a window over Terre Haute. I do know that. So those, obviously, ims.com/tickets. That's where you can get all the other information there. An interesting note on a Newsweek article that Indy 44 pulled out. This quote, and I'm going to let you guess the driver.
Okay.
Because you're not going to guess. But he says, when you look at the Indy 500 and everything that comes with the Indy 500, that is an experience from the open wheel side of that hopefully I get to experience this year. I don't have anything to do that weekend, so I'd love to experience what heaven might be like. Now, they're not participating in the event.
Okay.
But they want to attend.
But this is a driver.
A former driver.
Former driver.
Well known. Very established.
Well, I was going to say Dale Earnhardt Jr., but he's been to the 500.
Yes.
Before. Well-known driver. I will say, well-known driver. I will say, Jeff Gordon's been there, right? He's been to the 500.
Yes.
I was going to say him.
Because he was there with the Larson effort in McLaren and Hendrick.
Yeah. Who has not experienced Formula One? I'll say Sebastian Vettel.
Kevin Harvick.
Is he retired?
Yeah.
Oh, crap. I was thinking Kevin Harvick, but I thought he was still driving.
No, he's retired.
Now, does he have a relationship with Hendrick?
Did he have a race for Hendrick? I don't think so. I don't think he did. Because he was with Stuart Haas, right, for a bit.
I don't think he ever raced for Hendrick.
I don't think so.
I was thinking maybe the tie-in with Kyle Larson, maybe he would be, a guest or whatever. But that's interesting.
Yeah, Richard Childress and Stuart Haas were the teams he was with in Cup.
And now Harvick, what is doing Cup broadcasts for who?
Fox.
Hey, there you go. Tie-in, Fox broadcast. Over Kevin Harvick.
That's true. He will probably be the NASCAR driver featured because it's obviously not going to be Dale Jr. anymore.
Correct.
Because that was an NBC relationship, and he's no longer with NBC. He's now with Prime for their NASCAR package.
He is. So Kevin Harvick, there's your natural tie-in because, he hasn't been there. Fox has the broadcast. He's a Fox broadcaster for NASCAR. There we did. We figured it out. How about
that? Elsewhere, so I think that's fascinating. He'll get to, and always glowing reviews when an all-time great in a different series, says something like that about the Indy 500, which I mean, we should expect it at this point, but I think as fans of the sport who lived through kind of a down era prior to, 2016, I guess you would say, it feels like it's grown incrementally. Obviously a big jump in 2016, but then it picked up, I think, more than we ever expected. It feels good.
I really don't think people truly understand. I want to say the lack of energy around the Indianapolis 500, but just the vibe, the fear that after the 100th,
yes,
there was going to be a drop off, because you had so many people that were saying, well, we're just holding on to our tickets until the 100th. And then, Doug Bowles and his staff, I mean, I don't think they get and never will get enough credit for what they've done for the Indianapolis 500 to continue to build the excitement after the 100th. And it's been just tremendous, because I think when you were in the mid 90s and it was almost like, man, they're just trying to get to the 100th anniversary and that'll be a big blowout. And after that, maybe you have a lot of people that just start giving up their tickets. But it's been just a great job by everybody. You have to credit the series as well, but predominantly Doug Bowles and what he's done from grassroots efforts, right, going across the state and doing all these town halls and stuff like that, to fans and everybody. If you don't live in Indiana, and even if you're just a new fan, I don't think you know just where the vibe was when you were at the 95th, 96th, 97th, 98th, leading up to the 100th, right? Whether it was the 100th anniversary or the 100th running. It was just almost like, let's just get there, and then, maybe it falls off, but it hasn't.
You had an incredible finish in 2011 with Dan Weldon winning, and that was the 100th anniversary. Right. And it was a good crowd, but it wasn't packed to the gills like 2016. You had the new DW12 card. The 2012 through 2014 era racing was unbelievable.
Right.
2015 was a slight step back, but still really good. And then you get to 2016, and like you said, even they admitted, like IMS said, can we maintain this?
Yeah.
But they've been up year over year from, in 2017, they were up from 2015, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So,
and then you have a pandemic year where you have nobody there in 2020, or very few, right? Were there
no one in 20, and then 135,000, really 150,000, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's
in 2021.
But you have no fans and then partial fans, and then what we've seen over the last 3 years has just been tremendous. And you don't want to point to the pandemic, but could that have been when you have 2 years where you're not allowed to go, or there's not enough tickets for everybody, then you kind of show, absence makes the heart grow fonder type thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Could that have re-energized?
I feel like it did, and it just kind of, people like, oh yeah, like you don't want to be away too long, and 1 year is obviously a long time for a major event, but it was do people just stop going because they didn't go for a year, or the opposite happened where people were away from this and they missed it and they wanted to go back, and it really made an impact. So all in all, good stuff there. A few other notes to get to before we wrap up. Speaking of the Indy 500, Fox Sports continues their promotion. They had Mark Ingram show up to Big Noon Kickoff in an IndyCar.
He did.
They did a promo for the Indy 500 even during Big Noon between IU and Nebraska.
Yeah, they were in Bloomington, so it made sense to have a show car there.
But
nice.
More good promotion.
What was the livery?
It was just the generic IndyCar.
Okay, I didn't know if it was an IndyCar on Fox livery, which would be cool.
No, they did not have that yet. But again, more good promotion, obviously. Positive things. Adam Stern saying this: IndyCar expects its new street race around AT&T Stadium to cost less than $50 million to pull off.
And it's being split at least three ways.
Yes.
So it's not IndyCar fully funding it. It's not Jerry Jones fully funding it.
Not the Rangers fully funding it.
It's not Rev fully funding it. It's a compilation of things. And I think that was another story that really pointed out the fact that Jerry Jones sees what happened around Hard Rock Stadium in Miami and what that has led to, and really trying to maybe rival that, of which, as much as a boring race with the U.S. Grand Prix, it sounded like another big crowd. And seemingly, if you read certain F1 writers, just every year seems to become a bigger event, even to the point where somebody mentioned, and I think I read it on The Athletic, it was the Tuesday after the race, and they were in a random store in Austin, and somebody asked him if they were in town for the F1 race, and then a customer came over, overheard him talking about it, and joined in. I mean, it's that vibe that, how many times do we talk about IndyCar races where people in town don't even know the race is going on, and that would be great to have that energy in Dallas-Fort Worth. Maybe not year 1, but year 3 or year 4 that that Miami has or Austin has with the U.S. Grand Prix.
Speaking of other tracks, Colton Herta, Pato O'Ward feel optimistic about good racing at Iowa next year. That per Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com. The caveat we want to point out, though, the ambient temperature was around 50 degrees when they did this test. This would have been last week.
So October, 50 degrees, good racing. Summer, 95 degrees, TBD.
Yeah, not much carryover, in my opinion, with that kind of data. A couple of lights notes. So they had the Chris Griffiths Memorial Test. Miles Rowe was fastest. Haley Deegan made a jump, was about 3.8 seconds off, but she started about 6 seconds off the pace. So she made a jump. I think and Marshall Pruitt, I think, said this as well, if she can get, around 2 seconds, I think there's a chance she could get closer than that going into the season opener on the road and street courses. Again, this is a process, but she made a lot of progress in the first test.
One test. These are all going to be all new tracks. I mean, it's all new cars for Haley Deegan. So let's not immediately jump to little Lindsey Brewer comparisons, because this is somebody that's trying an entirely new discipline to what she's used to. So let's give her a couple years before we start judging Haley Deegan and her potential in open wheel.
From a driver who participated in IndyCar this year, he will be in the FIA WEC rookie test in Bahrain coming up next month. That is Teo Pourchaire. So I think his chances of landing an IndyCar seat, I think they're getting slimmer and slimmer by the day.
Very slim. Do you feel like at any moment, at any time, we see Teo Pourchaire back in IndyCar at some point?
I would be surprised unless it's a fill-in for McLaren.
Yeah, I would agree.
In terms of a full-time ride, and I think it's unfortunate. I think he showed himself quite well.
He was the darling for a couple weeks.
I just don't think it's going to happen. Let's see what else. You talked about the Fox Sports booth. Mark Miles declined to comment on whether Alan Bestwick will be part of the booth, and that from Adam Stern as well. So we talked about the report. It's unclear who will be in the booth just yet. So we shall see. And then one other thing before we get to tweets of the week and our random split air driver of the week. Graham Rahal Performance LLC has been sued. That's one of Graham's businesses for failing to procure a limited edition Mercedes.
So a customer wanted one of these Rahal's
Now
company.
It's right next door to the race team shop
so
in Zionsville, Indiana.
The company said, we'll get you one. They didn't, and the guy's suing.
Yeah, breach of contract.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, $1.2 million deposit to secure the car and deliver it to a company in Montana.
So they have not done it. So, I mean, shouldn't the guy get his money back, I guess? Or is it a non-refundable deposit? Yeah. Seems like a lot of money for a non-refundable deposit. But hey, when you got millions of dollars
they
to
said
throw
they
around,
would return the deposit. Graham Rahal reportedly said they'd return it, but it's apparently not yet happened.
Gotcha.
And
well,
we'll see how this plays out.
You get served papers, it usually speeds up that process.
That is true. All right, tweets of the week, pretty simple theme here. First off, the video, Pato and his fans, and Marshall Pruitt posted a picture of the billboard that says Pato who? That's in Speedway. And then Jack Binion, different photo, different video, this of the line of Pato fans waiting to get into the event, said, wait until you see the line for Adrian Fernandez. Outstanding stuff.
Definitely.
All right, time for our random split air driver of the week.
Well, we talk about the Unser family a lot.
Yes.
Right? Jerry, Al, senior and junior, even Robbie.
Bobby.
Yeah. But what about Johnny Unser?
Yes.
And maybe the forgotten Unser a little bit. And raced portions of 4 different seasons in the IRL Indy Racing League, his last season coming in 2000. Overall, he started 15 races across IndyCar and did some kart racing as well in 93, 94. But in terms of the split era, 96 through 2000, with Project Indy, Hemmelgarn, Bird Cunningham, and Indy Regency Racing.
I've actually heard of all 4 of those teams. That's, I think, the most shocking part of this so far.
So he had 1 top 10 over the course of those races, and it was actually his first appearance. 1996 for Project Indy, finished 9th at Phoenix. Had several starts at the Indianapolis 500, 96, 97, 98, 99, and 2000. Best finish was 18th in 97 when he was racing for Hemmelgarn. His best finish was also that first year finish. He started 16th, finished last 33rd in 1996. And that was the extent of his racing. He actually, and I did not know this, in 2008 was named the race director of the Champ Car Atlantics Championship in 2008.
Okay.
Was then a driver coach and advisor in the Mazda Road to Indy, and racing advisor and spokesman for Cooper Tire, which I also didn't know. It says he is an official for IndyCar and race control, but I don't know if that's still true.
I don't think
he's not in race control either. But his last major open wheel race was the 2000 Indianapolis 500. He is still the owner of Unser Racing Karting and Entertainment in Denver, Colorado. So maybe if IndyCar goes to Denver, could we see, Johnny Unser walking around? Who knows?
Also fascinating on his Indy 500 results, he started 35th in 1997. So he's one of those cars that got added into the field.
That's him and Lynn St. James, right?
Yes.
When you own the speedway and own the league, you can do whatever you want. Now, were they added post-qualifying or added during qualifying weekend? Because that I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm actually looking this up because I don't recall everything. That they're reinstated after the close of time trials.
So the time trials were over, and then he added them in 97.
So Lynn St. James, Johnny Unser, lone 2 drivers have been bumped out. Both of them, like Alessandro's and Pedri, also another random splitter driver of the week, before he managed to requalify, had posted qualifying speeds among the fastest 33 cars, which were also faster than 8 of the locked-in entries.
That's right.
USAC officials previously expressed their concern that due to the soon-to-be-abandoned 25-8 rule, the fastest 33 cars would not be starting the race. Eventually, a decision was made that afternoon to reinstate any at-large entries that were bumped, provided they were among the fastest 33 cars overall. The ruling added St. James and Unser back to the field, being placed 34th and 35th, making both drivers the first since George Snyder and Bill Vukovich the second in 1979 to start from the 12th row at an Indianapolis 500.
But I think this is fascinating, too, because so many people talk about 35 starting in 1997. There was a crash on the pace lap that took out 3 cars. 2 additional cars failed to start the race due to mechanical problems. Only 29 cars technically took the green flag to start the 1997 Indianapolis 500. 35 were on the starting grid. Only 29 took the green.
Go figure.
But Johnny Unser, again, portions of 4 or 5 different seasons, still with us, mid-60s. Maybe a forgotten Unser, if there is one. This week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week.
All right, we'll be back next week with the latest news in the world of IndyCar as the offseason rolls along. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Batch. This has been New Track Record Podcast.